Welcome to the Peak Podcast. My name is Kyle Nelson, and I've got my good friend, my good buddy and co-host here, Mr. Eli Libby. What's going on, my man?
Dude, I'm doing great. I'm really doing good.
Beautiful day.
Amazing
today.
day. Yeah,
Yes.
amazing day.
Great combos.
We've had a lot of great podcasts today. Yeah. And really looking forward to this one.
Yes, it's going to be a great conversation. Our few minutes we just had in our pre-call, our pre-combos. I'm excited.
I am too, man.
So before we get started, wanted to remind you the Peak Podcast is all about us having conversations with other coaches, consultants, business owners, and founders out there to kind of talk about that peak moment that they had when they saw that they have something that they want to bring to the world that they have passion about and love for. And I think today we're going to see that a lot. Yeah. And we're also the co-founders of Peak Fulfillment. It is a self-guided solo retreat program where you go somewhere in complete solitude and peace and go over self-reflection, self-discovery, and vision crafting and get some clarity around where you want to head in life, where you've been, and set some good goals and pace for you. But without further ado, let's bring on Dr. Julie Pham. She is the founder of Curiosity Based and the author of 7 Forms of Respect. Dr. Julie, welcome to the Peak Podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you here. And you're just up north from us. We're in Oregon. You're in Seattle. Mm-hmm. How long have you been there for?
I grew up in Seattle.
Oh, no way.
Yes. Yes.
So you're around the area. Have you been down to Oregon?
I have been down to Portland, but I haven't been to Bend.
Yeah, just a couple more hours south and you'd be here.
Come hang out with us. Yeah.
Well, let's jump in. It's around the holiday time, so we like to do icebreakers.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of a good holiday icebreaker. Well, the last one we did was good, but how about favorite Christmas song? Does anybody have a favorite Christmas song?
I think it's the Drummer Boy.
Yes.
Yeah, that one.
Yep. Yeah. I like Sleigh Ride. I think it's called Sleigh Ride. It's the one that was in Elf when he gets hit by the taxi. It's that one. It plays. I'm not going to jingle. Yeah, I don't remember what it is, but it's called Sleigh Ride. That's my favorite one. You have one?
Holy Nights. Yep.
Holy Nights.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful one.
Yeah, it is.
Nice.
I'm not going to sing for us today. No, sorry. So, Dr. Julie, before we get started, tell us a little bit about Curiosity Based in a few lines and kind of what you got going on there.
Yeah, we help people practice curiosity in the world, starting in the workplace, because that is where we spend most of our waking hours. And I say practice curiosity. Yeah. A lot of times people talk about curiosity like it's a trait. You either have it or you don't have it. That's usually... And I actually think of it as a practice, and it's something we do, and sometimes we don't do, and sometimes it's really hard to do. And it comes down to these 3 elements of self-awareness. So how to be curious about myself, relationship building, how do I be curious about other people and let them be curious about me? And then clear communication. How do I listen to understand, ask questions when I don't, and share specific examples and stories?
I love that. That is amazing.
So
you break it down into 3 different styles. How would you define curiosity?
I think of it. I think of it as a practice, and it's just that I actually liken it to meditation. It looks easy, yet it's really hard to do. Yeah. So I think of it as both inward and outward. So a lot of people think of curiosity as outward. I want to accumulate new knowledge.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's when it's easy because it can be fun to add to things that we don't know. What's really hard is when we have to challenge things that we think we know already.
Absolutely.
And so that's where that inward curiosity and asking myself questions of, what does this mean to me? Why am I having the reaction that I'm having?
Why is this emotion coming out when someone asks me that? Or whatever it may be. Right?
It seems like it stems from like you said earlier, one of the buzzwords was deep self-awareness. Is that something that you typically are coaching through, talking through? How does that work?
Yes. And I think of it as just, how do I be curious about myself? How do I ask myself some questions? How do I pause? And so, I mentioned that practicing curiosity can be difficult at times. And so one thing I advise people to do is when you're approaching a difficult conversation, maybe with someone who you're just in a disagreement with.
Yeah.
And as I'm entering that conversation, you got to ask yourself these 2 questions.
Yeah.
The first question is, do I want that person to learn from me? Yes, of course. Right. That's why we're going into this conversation.
Yeah.
And the second question is, am I willing to learn from them? Am I willing to learn from them? And because if I can't if I can't say yes to that, then maybe it's too soon for me to enter that conversation. And
Sure.
also, I just want to add here, we can all perform the desire to learn. We can all perform listening,
Yeah.
but actually, am I? And so there, it kind of creates this speed bump so that I can really ask myself, I might have my mind changed. Am I willing to do that?
Right. To me, the way that you're approaching this is that's the kind of leader I want to follow. Someone that's curious and they have those principles and they practice that and approaches a conversation in that way.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is, I mean, I think leaders often, you got to fail, you got to learn from your mistakes. And yet they never talk about their failures. They never talk about their mistakes. And I gave a TEDx talk called Curiosity as a Practice. And I start with a humiliating experience I had where I got called out and I was so angry and resentful about it. And then I had to ask myself, maybe I felt a little entitled going into that talk. What were my expectations going into that? And so I think it's really important to actually admit when curiosity is hard. Do you want to talk about a time when curiosity was hard for you?
Yeah. Curiosity was hard for me. I don't mean to like sound like it's never been hard, but truthfully, I live like very curiously.
You do.
And I think I come across very like selfless to people, and I'm super curious, and I ask all the questions in a conversation.
Yeah.
Like I try and dive deep, and I'll ask you any question before you even have a time to ask about me. So I think I was naturally born and or somewhere along my childhood found curiosity, whether it was in family or a circle that I got involved in.
What about for yourself though? Think about when you went on your solo retreat and something
For sure.
things you discovered on that.
Yes, that is a great point. That's a really good point. I think I was thinking more like as a conversation piece.
Yeah, you pour into others.
And that's when inward curiosity can be a lot harder than outward curiosity.
Absolutely.
Learning something new. Oh, I want to learn all these things about you. But when I have to be challenged, when did you thought something and your expectations reality and expectations were different and you had to really face that?
I'll just round out, and then if you want to jump in, Kyle brings up a great point. We lead a solo retreat program. As you know, we talked about it a little bit. Maybe you've looked at it. That is inner curiosity to its core. You are by yourself and you doing deep work, but you've given yourself the space and the permission to have that time to work on yourself. So for me, that was the hardest point, which is like cracking down and getting down to the core of limiting beliefs. Yeah. And I found what my limiting belief was, and I was able to rewire that through curiosity. Yeah. What about you?
I grew up, sounds all ego aside, I grew up as a natural leader. Like in high school, I was the class president every year. I was very involved in Future Farms of America at a national scale. Always had businesses. I've always on different multiple boards. And I've always found that when it comes to curiosity, it's natural for me. But at the same time, having that mindset of a leader, you put that wall up though as well, because it can be very like, well, my experience, I know this and I know that this is right. And I want to hear what you say, but am I honestly curious about it? Right. And so I think sometimes in that position throughout life, I've had difficulty with that for sure. I've never really had issues with inner curiosity. I've always really highly reflected on things in my emotions and why do I tick the way I tick and why do I have certain behaviors and why do I do the things I do. But with others, I would say that, diving deep, I think part of it can be confidence as well. Not feeling the worth of my, what I have to say in the conversation is really valid as well. And I think a lot of people deal with that, even though the whole room's probably thinking the same thing and wants to ask it, but it takes really removing that self-doubt. And that can be really difficult sometimes, especially when you have people in the room that are more accolades, more worthy than you 100%. In that way. And so that really detracts that curiosity, I think, and having that confidence to be able to do it.
Well, actually, one of the other things I think can really get in the way of curiosity is to thinking of ourselves as a problem solver. Because then it's just, I want that solution. I want that solution. What's the solution? And we don't slow down to say, what's this problem teaching me?
Absolutely.
And actually what inspired my business was actually because I used to run this cross-sector collaboration fellowship, bringing together people from tech, the private sector, government, and nonprofits. And I saw some fellows did really, they were really thriving, and others were really struggling. And it took me a few cohorts to realize the difference. Why were some thriving and some struggling? And the ones who were struggling were the ones who were so focused on getting a particular outcome.
Interesting.
And they were just, got to go to plan. Why didn't it go to plan? And the people who were really thriving were just, oh my gosh, look at what we're learning.
Right.
We created something out of nothing. And they were just really in the journey of it. And so I think that there is often pressure for us to get a certain revenue goal, to get a certain, whatever that goal is. And we are so focused on the outcome that we actually, that can make it hard to practice curiosity too.
For sure.
That's so true. Do you have a question?
I was just going to reverse the question and ask you.
Yeah.
When have you found times that you've had difficulty with curiosity?
I with my mom, there are times tell me what to do, and I'm just no. And then I have to slow down. I'm just like, oh, I mean, and I realized it's just, why is she always talking to me like a child? And then I realized she's not talking to me like a child. She's talking to me like I'm her child.
Oh, her child versus a child.
Yeah, and I had to slow down and realize that there's a difference. Yeah. And so I mean, even sometimes with my employees, actually, sometimes the way we give each other feedback is so I'd like to practice some curiosity right now and try to ask you questions to make sense of, instead of just saying, hey, why'd you do that? Yeah. Just because something, by the way, just because something ends with a question mark does not make it a question.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. So what would you recommend? So here's one of my biggest pet peeves. When you're interacting with somebody, and like you said in the beginning of the show, and maybe this is not like a solvable thing, but they clearly are not curious about you. Like you said, you should obviously be curious because that's why we're having the conversation. But when you talk to people and you ask them, you're asking the questions, and then like a half hour later goes by, and it's like we're talking to a wall.
It's like a monologue to the other person.
It's like a monologue.
Yes.
And how do you break that down? How do you break that down and like shake them to become curious?
So here's the thing. Sometimes we think that if we ask questions, they will reciprocate.
Yeah.
Very true. That is not the case. And I actually remember teaching this to my boyfriend's son, who I think was 10 years old at the time. And I don't have that much interaction with kids. And so I'd ask them all these questions, and his kids would never ask me questions in return. And then one day I was just, hey, you can ask me questions too. And what I didn't realize was there was a power dynamic. And so he felt that he couldn't ask me questions. And once I said, hey, you can ask me questions too, he started to. And then after that, actually, every time we met, I'd ask, how is he doing? And then he would tell me. And then I'd say, do you have any questions for me? And to the point where it got to be where we'd see each other, he's like, how are you doing? Because he didn't want to be. And so now he's really good at asking questions. So one thing is not to expect that if you do something, if you're modeling something, that someone else will get that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you actually just have to say, hey, you can ask me questions too.
Sure. Okay. We had a really cool podcast a couple weeks ago. There was actually a couples coach.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And I think it's cool. And this is in the same vein, but from a curiosity perspective, authentic curiosity.
Yes.
Meaning diving deeper with this is from a spousal perspective, but versus, hey, how was your day? It's being more curious about their day. Hey, what was what made you laugh today?
Right.
And like being curious about their day, and then it opens them up.
Right. Because most people just want to respond, it was okay. It was hard. Instead, it's more of a specific question.
Yeah. We took a lot from that as well.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I do on my team is we have a 2-hour core team meeting every week, and we spend the first 30 minutes just going around and sharing what our highs and lows are.
Yeah.
And then we also, every month, we come up with a question. That's the theme that we keep returning to that question. And so sometimes it's a question for us to make sure, say, what did you say no to this week? Okay, we're practicing boundaries. Or it could be, what's something that made you smile this week? And so in addition to our highs and lows. And so it kind of just gives people a chance to do that story sharing. And then also when I hear someone else's answer, I think about, how would I answer that? Or how would I react to that?
I love that.
Would love to hear a little bit about your book.
Yeah.
7 Forms of Respect.
Yeah. So are you familiar with the 5 love languages?
Yes.
We are.
Yes. So think of it as 7 forms of respect. It's kind of being the respect version of that. Respect and love are different.
Mm.
And also but there are actually some added layers of how it's dynamic. And so we can agree on how respect feels, to feel seen, heard, acknowledged, recognized. What we disagree about is, what does it look like? If for some people it looks like, I want to be CC'd on all emails because that makes me feel included. And for other people, it's just, don't fill in my inbox. And for some people, to listen deeply is a sign of respect. And for others, multitasking is a sign of performance, and it's not a big deal. And so actually at the core of 7 forms of respect is, because one of the things that people really get mixed up is they think, oh, this is how I have to be respectful. They think it's like 7 habits of highly effective people.
Right.
And I love to go in whenever I'm working with groups, and I ask people, raise your hand if you think you know how to be respectful. And people raise their hands. I don't think you know how to be respectful. Like, what? And I was like, I know you know how to be respectful. I know it. And I also know I'm not here to teach you how to be respectful, because I know you know how to be respectful already. We just have different ideas of what respect looks like. And so the point is, how do we be curious about respect?
Right.
It's actually, how do we slow down? And how do we ask, Kyle, what does that look like to you? Eli, what does that look like to you? And where does that come from? Because all of our experiences have actually socialized us. And there's a lot of, I should do this, I should expect this.
Sure.
And yet, what actually matters to us? What matters to me? I mean, I'll share with you an example. Growing up, my mom was always late picking me up from school. And that made me really anxious, because the school staff had to wait with me. They couldn't go home until I went home. So I carry that stress today.
Right.
And so for me, punctuality is actually, it creates this anxiety in me because I have that memory.
Right.
And when I share that with you, then you can understand why Julie is so concerned about time. But I had to ask myself that. And here's the thing. I had a negative reaction to that. Someone else could have that same experience and say, what's the big deal? Punctuality, not a big deal.
Yep.
So in any case, it's about getting curious about respect, curious about ourselves and about others.
Phenomenal.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get your book.
I think that would be very good read for us.
It would. So as we kind of wrap things up, what if there was one message that you really wanted to make sure that really hones in with our audience from this conversation? What would that be?
So I'm going to say respect, curiosity. Respect is relative. That's the one I want to leave with, actually. And I'm actually just going to do this quick illustration, because usually when people think about respect, they think of the golden rule.
Yeah.
I have what I have called the rubber band rule.
Okay.
And the rubber band rule is just, we actually can flex. So Eli, maybe I know you like this, and I'm kind of indifferent, but I'll stretch for you. And then when I'm with Eli and Kyle, gosh, they love their compliments. Okay, I'll give it to you because I want to respect you.
Yeah.
Right? And so what happens is, when we're stretching and stretching and stretching over time, what happens?
It breaks. Yeah.
We snap and break. And so the rubber band rule is about, what are my internal breaking points? How do I articulate that for myself? I can't expect other people to know. And oftentimes we expect other people to read our minds and just know. No, I need to articulate that for myself. And that is about self-respect. And how stretchy I am, that's going to change depending on if I'm at home or if I'm at work. And knowing that oftentimes respect it's contextual and it's dynamic. So it's how to be curious about respect, to be curious about others, and to be curious about ourselves. That's the message I want to leave with your listeners.
So good. I love it. Thank you so much.
Yes. Well, Dr. Julie, if people wanted to get in touch with you, maybe get your book or get involved with Curiosity Based, how could they find you?
Yes, I am very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. You can contact me on through my website, curiositybased.com, or formsofrespect.com. And I also have lots of little videos, tips and stuff on my YouTube channel as well.
Love it.
Beautiful.
I'm going to head over there.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
going to pick the book up for sure.
Amazing.
Dr. Julie, thank you so much for being on the Peak Podcast. It was extremely valuable 20 minutes conversation, and we really appreciate it. And I truly learned
I did
some
too.
great nuggets along
Such
the
a
way.
good-
So
my
thank you so
gosh.
much for your time.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Thank you so much, Eli.
Thanks.
Uh,
Wow.
it-
Mind blowing.
yes, just
I
some of the
loved-
examples.
I know.
Just some of the examples alone, and
So
the
good.
rubber band that
That was such a good illustration at
spoke
the end.
so much
For sure.
because it's what we do. We sit there and like, oh, we'll keep stretching. Done.
You snap.
Yes, love it. If you want to hear more guests on our podcast, just like Dr. Julie, make sure to subscribe. And we can't wait to have you along on the next episode of the Peak Podcast.
See you guys.